All right, good morning. Another wonderful Monday. And we're here to learn a little bit more about some more animation techniques. In particular, we are going to look at, curves today, okay? And I'm just waiting for the chat to come online so that I can make sure that my audio is off. Yep, everything is looking good. Chat's online. If you guys want to ask any questions, go ahead, type it in the chat on Vimeo. The link, again, is in Flowcasts. But if you're looking at this, then you already have a link to it. You might be in the Facebook group as well. And yeah, you can ask questions there too. And I'll pop over. I'll give it a shot at popping over and answer any questions there after the whole thing is done. Okay, so let's switch over to Flow. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a line to this. I'm going to turn on relative mode. So I just created a project. Okay, I created a new project. It's 400 by 400, and now I'm just creating a line. This is going to be the easiest way for us to play around with what we mean by path points and curves and things like that. Okay, so I just grabbed each one of these little handles and I pressed Command to snap it to the center of the scene. And looks like they're all relatively close. Let's make it 200. And then let's pick the first one. Yeah, I'm not liking this music this morning. It is making me uptight. So let's go like this. And let's go to me. And let's go with it. Let's go with some Future Joust. Much more relaxing. I think you guys can hear it a tiny little bit. Okay, so we have our line. All right, let's go and let's change this name to line. I always like to do this. Let's make the width 280. Let's make the X position 200. Okay, so it's dead center in the middle of the scene. And let's make that 40 high. Actually, let's make it a little bit less than that. Let's make it 20 thick. You guys can still see it. I can even zoom in a little bit more for you. And one thing, just for the sake of it, I'm going to make those line caps round. All right, so what do we mean by curves? Well, let's double click in here. Right now, what we have is a single line, which is 2 points and a path handle. And the point type of that is straight. It means that there are no curves on this thing. All the other options that we see up here and to the right are different ways of handling curvature on a point. And that's essentially what a curve is on a line. So when you're drawing in another tool or something like that, you're making a curve. What you're doing is you're saying there's a point here and it rounds out a little bit towards the next point and it rounds backwards a little bit to the next point. And so that point itself will have these little control handles, and those are the things that cause the curvature, okay? And that's what we're looking at today. So when I go up here into the right, I have a path point selected, the first one there, and it's straight. It means that we're not going to have any of those path handles. If there's no path handles, then it's just a flat straight line. And then you have different options. You have an option like this, where your path points are mirrored. So if you manipulate one, watch this, the other one balances out, okay? One other thing that I'll do is I'll just turn the fill color off of this as well, of this shape. Let's make it 0. Okay. Let's go back to our path points. Another one here is independent. It means that they can move on their own, and so on. But instead of just curving the end of one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to this one. I'm going to make it straight, and we are going to press Option. We're going to add another point to our shape, and we're just going to press Command to snap it to the center of the scene. Okay, so now we have this other point. This point's type is straight as well. And let's bring that up. Let's bring it up like that. And let's go ahead and make it, let's make it 80, just like that. So now we have 3 points. We have a straight point, a straight point, and a straight point. And that's going to give us a nice triangle shape because there's no curvature. The easiest way, again, to see curvature is to select one of those. We're going to select this one up here. You can also tell that it's like there's a right angle to that shape, or like a sharp angle to the corner of that shape. And the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to make it a mirrored curve, or a mirrored point. Now, again, any changes I make to one of these path point handles is going to mirror it to the other one. Okay, I can press Shift to bring it up and down, and to lock it into its position. I go back and forth, okay, something like this, and you're going to get a nice curve. Independent, again, easier to see in this condition when you have an independent curve. See this path handle, or this curve handle, this path point handle, it's defining the curvature coming from this point going to that point. And so it doesn't really matter what's on the other side of this thing. It does a tiny little bit, but not much. This one defines the curvature coming from this one and going to that one, or vice versa. It's going from here into here. So this is a combination of a straight point and a curved point. Now what I mean by there's a tiny little bit is, okay, the join or the drawing of the corners of these two lines where they intersect, that gets affected by one curve or another. See, like that? It just changes a tiny little bit, but that's the only real difference. Changing this point is never going to change that curve unless you have something that is mirrored, or like this option, asymmetric. Asymmetric means you can change the length of one. Okay, you can change the length of one, and the length doesn't reflect on the other side, but the angle will. Okay, so if you want to get something like, maybe like it curves a lot more and then sort of slopes in a little bit like that, you're going to use something like asymmetric. There is also, you can switch it to curve to, all right? So, and you can also switch it curve from. And this matters, it matters on where the point is coming from. So if the way that you think about curves as well is you need to think about the drawing direction. This is the first point, and we are going to curve to that guy. And then this one, okay, if you're curving from, you're going from this point to this point, and from this point to this point. So we're going to curve from this point to the next point. And that's why curve from is on this side. Okay? Now, anytime that you make a curve or you change a path point type, let's make this straight again, just to kind of reset where we were at the beginning of the podcast, flowcast, webcast, all of it. And now let's turn off relative mode. It's off. See, you can turn it off by pressing Command Shift R, Command Option R, or you can toggle this little magnet icon up here. And let's stick the playhead at 0.5 seconds, halfway along our animation, and let's make a path point change. So, did you notice no animations were created? None. Okay, and this is a key point. This is a key idea. There's a couple of things that you're going to do to shapes that aren't animatable, and it's because the nature of shapes. So there are some animation engines that are going to animate between things that have different kinds of points, and you can get that, but it's often a really unpredictable, not super nice way of animating. So what we do in Flow is we say, the path that you're animating or the shape that you're animating needs to have the same number of points all the way along the entire animation. And those points need to be of the same type. So I just switched the point type of the top one. Let's have a look. I switched the point type from straight to mirrored. Okay, let's look again. From straight to mirrored. And there's no animation happening. It's because what's now happening is that point is being changed throughout your entire timeline because the point type needs to stay the same. The other thing is the number of points needs to stay the same as well. So if I came in here and I pressed Option and I added a point, also no change. Okay? I'm just going to press Delete to undo that change. But now if I go ahead and I manipulate any one of these points, let's make it mirrored. Oh, let's undo. Let's make it mirrored. Now, if I change that, this is when you start to get animations, okay? And it's because the values of the properties of the point are changing, and that's causing us to create a new path, one that is distinctly different from the step before and the step afterwards, okay? And changing the values of things, just like everything else in Flow, is going to create an animation. But for shapes, adding a point or changing its point type is not going to. Now, there was like a step there where I did change from one to the other. It actually created a bit of an animation because the point had been asynchronous, and it switched to mirrored. And what it actually ended up doing was just moving one of its path point handles, and that did cause an animation. But we're actually just modifying it at that point. Okay. And so now what you'll see is this. You'll see like, okay, there's my animation. Path is animating up, animating down. Pretty straightforward stuff. Now, I want to go and look back again at last week's animation. We had this little donut that we had imported from an SVG, and I've just gone and done it again. And let's turn on relative mode. Let's change that stroke color out to here, and let's make that line 20 so we can see it nice and thick. All right. So we have our path points here. And just because of the nature of the SVG or the way that Sketch exported it, it's a circle with extra points on the edges. Notice how I'm deleting those points and not causing an animation. Oh, maybe I just triggered one. And we'll delete one more. There you go. Probably because I just moved it by accident. And we can even do the same thing here. We can delete every other one. Ah, look at that. It even doubled up the first point. Okay. Now, one other thing that we can do, we can just, when you're in path editing mode, you can press Command A to select them all, and let's just make them all mirrored, just to make it easier for us. Okay. Up here, the same thing is happening. We're going to delete that one. Okay, all mirrored. There we go. And you can go and you can edit this, 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 this. Let's just say the middle is like something out here, something like this. And we're gonna make this nice and curved out like that. You can even do things where you're taking one of those path point handles and you're actually going to copy that value. Let's make it 156 just to make it easy. Copy the Y value, and then we're going to say 156 and that. And so now these two lines are going to be parallel to one another. All right. And so we have our shape. There you go. Curves, easy. Very straightforward. Okay, very straightforward, very easy one today. Just looking at the technique and describing what one point type is or another, showed you simple things like you can select all of them, change them all at the same time. Explained a little bit about why you might not see an animation happen when you're actually making a change to a path point. And that sometimes you might think that you're not doing anything, but you are. So there was a point or two where like I just touched it and I actually just moved the point a little bit and it created an animation, probably moved it by like 1/100th of a point or something like that. So you can actually get animations like that. Animated the inside of a circle, deleted points, that kind of thing. But basically just focused on changing and animating the curvature between two different points or three different points. Okay. So this is going to be the basis for what we're going to look at tomorrow. And tomorrow we're going to look at how to morph between two different shapes. And knowing what's going on with points is going to make that a heck of a lot easier. Okay? Talk to you tomorrow.